Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Exceptional Relationships. I'm your host, Jason Safford, and I'm here with my fabulous co-host, Miss Ronique Clarke.
Hey, hi everybody.
How are you doing today?
That's good.
And
Good.
and today we are talking about the power of words and being heard.
Mm-hmm.
And I really want to investigate this episode because I struggle with feeling like people understand me all the time. I work so hard on my words. So
Mm-hmm.
tell me, what are our listeners in for in this conversation? What is so important about the power of words and being heard?
Number one, I do. This one thing I have to get biblical on this one. And when it comes to this, there is a verse in the book of Proverbs that says the power of life and death is in the tongue. So we we need to be careful what we say because words have power, and words, if they are not used in the correct way, can manifest some things in our lives that we really and truly don't want. You know what I mean? So in the same way that we pick and choose our thoughts every day, in the same way we pick and choose our clothes every morning, we have to pick and choose our words, because you never know what kind of energy or what kind of whatever it is, you don't know what you are inviting into your space as a result of you saying certain things. So we must all be cognizant of that within ourselves and with the people around us, because we all, since life and death is in the power of the tongue, we all have the power to speak positivity and speak life into our loved ones. You know what I mean? So that is what we're in for today.
So we all have the ability to speak life into our loved ones, and the power of words is in the tongue.
Yep.
And when I hear you say those things, it immediately makes me think not of what we say, but what we don't say.
Yep.
And how so often being heard has to do with allowing someone the space
Yeah.
to just share what it
Mm-hmm.
is that they're going through or experiencing, or what has happened to them,
Yep. That is
and
true.
not involving ourselves in any way in that experience, letting them just share it until they ask you, what do you
Mm-hmm.
think?
Yep. Um, I read something this morning that was, I said that the greatest question, the greatest question you could ever ask is, do you want to vent or do you want advice?
Mm-hmm.
That is somebody had put in, said that is the greatest question one can ever ask.
Yeah.
Within the last, like, what, 40 years, the greatest question of the last 40 years, because that in itself will avoid a lot of conflict.
Mm-hmm.
Do
Mm-hmm.
you want to vent or do you want advice?
Yeah.
And that in itself, that is a question where you you open yourself up to allowing the other person to be heard. That's number one. And number two, allowing yourself to hear and listen, truly listen to what this person is trying to say. Not just in not just in the spoken word, but in the language of what we're not letting out of our mouths, which is body language. You know what I mean? So yes, it's a very that in itself is very, very, very important.
And thinking about body language with the words that we communicate and the power of words being so important in whether they empower someone or disempower
Mhm.
someone.
Yep.
How much do you think we even pay attention to that with ourselves in terms of looking at our own body language in the mirror and talking to
Mhm.
ourselves?
That is true. You know what? Not a lot of people. Not a lot of people, and from my understanding, a lot of people just say things willy-nilly, and they don't understand the impact that it can potentially have on their lives and the lives of people around them, just because they don't know any better. You know what I mean? So what you find, for example, what you find when somebody says something along the lines that I will live to see you do this, or I will live to see you not do this, right? Even if it's in even if it's up from out of jest,
Mm-hmm.
right? You all of a sudden you see later on down the line, whatever it is, them say them going to live to see you not do this, or live to see you do this.
Mm-hmm.
It always manifests itself later on down the line, and people
Right.
wonder why.
Mm-hmm.
It's the power of the word, the power of the spoken word. And that is why there was a I don't like to bring Harry Potter in this. If anybody watched the the second Deathly Hallows, or
Okay.
even read the books,
Mm-hmm.
right? The chapter that says King's Cross, when Dumbledore speaks to Harry when he was knocked out by Voldemort, and he had said, words are an indescribable source of magic, and it is capable of inflicting injury and remedying it. And people don't understand the power of that, Yes, it's in a movie, but at the end of the day, when you translate it into other things, it's same thing that comes back to the Bible. The power of life and the power of death comes out of the tongue, comes through the spoken word.
And, you know, this goes contrary to something that a lot of us were raised to say, which is sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me. And
Mhm.
in life, that's really not true.
Not
You know,
true. That is true.
words hurt far more than sticks and stones or any physical punishment when it's delivered by a person that's important to you. And often that person is yourself. So
Hmm.
many people discourage themselves, disempower themselves, and don't
Yep.
even realize it
And
because
don't
they
even
don't.
realize exactly.
Yeah, the
Them
the
don't
words that
realize.
they are speaking to themselves
Even
are,
if it's in jest,
yeah,
even if it's just willy-nilly, and then when certain things happen to them later on down in life, they really wonder why. It's because you invited that into yourself. You invited certain things by what you are saying to yourself, and also what you allow other people to speak over you. You know
and
what I
when,
mean?
yeah, I was going to say, and when you let people speak over you, again, is part of that the conversation in your own head that you're saying certain things to yourself that allow people to speak over you.
Hmm. Yep. Yep.
So
Yep.
when we talk about being heard, part of it is really allowing yourself to be heard to yourself.
Self, yep, that is true.
And when we get into now a relationship, whether it's a relationship with a colleague, a friend, a loved one, or your significant other, whoever it is,
Mm-hmm.
what are some of the things that really can be the difference in whether or not the other person feels heard, or is being heard?
You allow them to speak. Allow them to speak. Allow them to speak and really listen to what they're trying to say, because there there is always a reason why people are saying certain things. There's always a reason. And the thing about it is, I know for me, I don't know about anybody else. I know about me. I say things to certain people because I care. And that is how we all are. We say certain things to the ones around us because we care about it.
Mm-hmm.
If we didn't care, we wouldn't say it.
Mm-hmm.
It wouldn't even cross our minds to say. You know what I mean? So when I say certain things, when I say certain things, I know I'm saying it out of a place where I care, and I care enough to say this to you. And I would like the respect to be allowed to share that with you, because there's a reason why I'm sharing it.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? But not a lot of people can do that. Not a lot of people can do that, and the thing about the reason why is because of how they were raised.
Or the
And it's
interactions in their lives.
ah, mm-hmm, yep.
And it brings up the sort of awareness to the challenges in relationships. I mean, it, the big thing is the fact that the two richest men in the world are currently single, or one's about
Oh
to
my
be single. And
God.
when you look at it in terms of relationships, I mean, here are men who have it all.
Mhm.
Their wives, have it all. What is the reason that they couldn't, keep it together? And in both
There's even
cases,
even that there's a reason behind it too. We're not
sure,
gonna get into that right now. Even that there's a reason behind
sure.
it.
But we're talking about the power of words here, and I'm using this as an example, so go with me on this. But the
Yes.
the 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 point is that at a certain point they no longer empowered each other, and they
Mm,
use this phrase, we can no longer grow together,
mm-hmm.
and so therefore they grow apart. Think about that in terms of the power of words in that statement. We can
Mm-hmm.
no longer
No
grow
longer grow
together.
together. Mm-hmm.
That's a powerful statement.
That is very true.
That's an
Because you are
incredibly powerful statement.
effectively, okay, you know what happened? It is effectively cutting off the tree.
That's right. And that means that for the length of their relationship up until that point, they did look at it as growth together.
Mm-hmm.
But at a certain point, they could no longer maintain it. They could no longer nurture it. They could no longer keep it growing. So it was
Mm,
dying. So
yeah.
that's what's not, you don't hear it, but what they're saying in that we could no longer grow together is that they effectively let their relationship die.
Yep.
And that's the thing about words, is that in being heard, if you're truly listening to what someone is saying and
Mm-hmm.
and what's coming out of their mouth, oftentimes it's what's not coming out of their mouth that is
That is
really
really what is
being
going on.
expressed.
Yep. Mm-hmm. Yep.
And that takes a certain willingness and a sense of empathy to
Mm-hmm.
really, going back to a episode we did a long time ago, you talked about the importance of stating your intentions.
Mm-hmm.
Think about how much we take for granted in
Mm-hmm.
every conversation that we have with people, that we
Yep.
don't state our intentions for that conversation right up front.
Mm-hmm.
We call or confront or address people with this sense of ownership that we
Yeah.
have the right to just speak, and automatically they are going to know what we're talking about, that
Yeah.
somehow they can assume all of the details in the state that you're in and be able to
Mm-hmm.
decipher what's really going on inside of you.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Why do we take so much for granted?
Honestly, that is a very it varies. It varies. If people if people knew if people knew what what you may call it, I'd like to say, if people knew the power that they had, that they have within the words that they speak, and even the words that they don't speak, if people knew the power, certain things would not be said. And just because they don't know, they just say it willy-nilly. And that all comes back to how they were socialized and how they were raised and how their parents were raised.
Do
So
you think?
people walk around and say things nonchalantly, and certain things are certain things are not valued. Certain words are not valued.
Mhm. Do you think that one of the misinterpretations of the power of words is how we use them to manipulate other people?
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yep.
Why do
Yep.
you think that we misuse words to manipulate things that we
Mis-
want?
misuse words to
Mm-hmm.
manipulate.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of times out of selfishness.
Mm-hmm. And notice that I carefully asked that question because the power of words is even in recognizing that somebody can selfishly use that power for self-interest, and in
Uh-huh.
so doing it's a misuse
Yep,
of
that's true.
words, and that's manipulation.
And the thing about it is, in this day and age, the world that we live in, words are incredibly powerful, just as powerful now as it was 30, 40 years ago. And what has happened now, people have now taken the power of the spoken word for granted. As a majority of the world has taken the power of the spoken word for granted.
Mm-hmm.
That is why they can easily be manipulated into certain things by people who are only out for their own selfish interests, and they can misuse words and position words in such a way to mislead, because the people who are being misled, they don't know and they don't understand the power that comes with the spoken word. And sometimes they know, they just don't care. And usually when that happens is out of fear. It's out of fear and blinded ignorance. We're not going to
And
be ignorant.
and going on that, you state that it's out of fear and blind ignorance, but would you look at a lot of the miscommunication and the misinterpretation as fear in itself?
Yeah.
Oftentimes, when somebody tries to communicate something, if the other person doesn't want to hear it,
Yeah.
or they're blinded by their own self-interest or they're distracted, they're communicating in that this is not important to me, even if it's important.
Yeah. Yep, that's true.
And I think that it goes back to how we started this conversation, that a big part of the struggle of the power of words is recognizing if the other person even wants to hear what you have to say. You could use the
Yeah.
best words in the world.
That's true.
You could pull the greatest statements out of the universe. And there's an old saying, you can bring a horse to water, but if it doesn't want to drink.
Yep, that's true. You can bring a horse water, but you can't force him to drink it.
Right. And I think that part of our challenge is that the power of words is only as powerful as the person who wants to hear them. So being heard is something that also has to do with wanting to hear.
Yep. Yep, that's true.
How can you be heard if you don't want to hear?
That is true. That is so true.
Why do you think?
It's reciprocal.
Yeah, and
It's an exchange of energies.
Why do you think we're so disconnected that we want to be heard, but we don't want to hear?
Again, it varies. It varies, but usually it all comes down to distraction. It all comes down to distraction, and it also comes down at the root of it is what we perceive to be important, and what isn't, what is important to us and what is not important to us. Because usually if it's important to us, we're going to want to hear it. But if it's not important, we're not going to want to hear it, because it isn't benefiting us. It isn't benefiting whatever we feel to be enabling us to grow or develop or change. So if it's not important to us, we're not going to want to hear it.
So let's look at this in terms of, the culture right now. We've been in a pandemic for the last year and change, and the divorce rate, is going up, and it was already over 50% before, but now it's going up.
Oh yes.
People are more reticent about relationships than ever before.
Yep.
Women are more discouraging about their prospects with men. I remember last fall we did an episode on a different podcast about the Cardi B and Megan Thee Stallion song WAP, and the reaction to that song was so negative, and people and women were very upset that Cardi B does one song and men are away, have been doing this for decades, but women and the problem, and you and I discussed this, the problem that was nobody was listening to each other. So all of this controversy is being created, and more than ever, where we have the access, we have more resources, more channels, more outlets to speak and be heard. But nobody is really listening to each other.
Nope.
So whether you use Clubhouse, you use Discord, or you use WhatsApp, it doesn't matter what the platform is. We're all talking.
Yep.
And we're looking for people to hear us, but we're not actually listening
because
to
the thing
know
about
what people are interested in.
Because the thing about listening involves taking the information and, in a sense, making it a part of you, in a way. because you're taking the information into yourself and you're analyzing and you're trying to understand the information. And in understanding, you're making the information a part of you in terms of what knowledge that you have in terms of what's in your brain. So, yeah, man, not a lot of people are listening with are trying to, in terms of listening, trying to understand.
Mm-hmm. Or they're only trying to understand what's beneficial to them.
If it's important to them, they're going to do their best to listen and understand. But if it's not important to them, they're not going to want to hear it. They're not going to want to listen.
Right. Right. And do you think that going back to the power of words, that's part of the bigger problem, is that
Mm-hmm.
we have become illiterate in our understanding of what communication is really for?
Really, oh yes, oh yes, because it goes deeper. It goes deeper than calling somebody on the phone. It goes deeper than going on WhatsApp and communicating with somebody. It goes a whole lot deeper than that, because at the end of the day, you are taking things into your spirit. You're taking things into your spirit and making it a part of you in the sense of speaking and hearing and listening and understanding. So we all have to be careful.
Why
We
is
all have to,
communication so uh what's the right word? I'm why has it become less valuable with all of these channels and resources? Why don't we appreciate really getting deep with each other?
communicating
Yeah, why is intellectual conversation and intelligent conversation no longer what we strive for?
because a lot of people are afraid of what they're going to. I'm afraid of what they're going to find out.
Mm-hmm.
That's usually what it is,
Mm-hmm.
the fear of finding what is really in front of your face.
So, are you intimidated? Or when I say are people intimidated by the idea that they're not as smart as they think they are?
Yeah, yeah. Because the thing about it is, when you listen with understanding and you listen to certain things, you realize that you don't know everything. And everybody wants to feel as if they know everything.
And that
You know?
also shows you how little power people have in words, because the more you understand the power of words, the more humility you have for the
Yep.
power of words.
Oh yes. Oh yes. Humility and respect for the power of words.
So is that what's missing in being heard, is a lack of humility and respect?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yep. Respect for others and respect for self.
How
Because
do
the thing
we
about it is, if you respect self, certain things, you're going to conduct yourself differently when you once you have respect for self and value for self. Once you have respect and value for self, you conduct certain things completely differently.
Mhm. How do we share with our listeners, what can we leave them with that can help them understand within themselves how to find greater appreciation for the power of words and being heard?
Positive affirmations, a lot of positive affirmations. And even if they sometimes people say fake it to make it, you make it a routine to speak positive affirmations over your own life
Mm-hmm.
and over the lives of the people around you, so they are better equipped to handle the words that are thrown at them.
I'm going to piggyback on that, and I'm going to give you one that I have always practiced, but recently was reminded of. And it's something
Mm-hmm.
that I was taking for granted. And this is funny. You know
Well,
how people say, he tells it like it is, or
yeah.
I want to be told the truth like it is.
Uh-huh.
Those are actually disempowering statements.
Mm-hmm. Because
And
nobody really wants to hear the truth like it is.
that's correct. They
They don't
say
want
they
to hear the truth
do.
like they
That's
only
right.
say they do, but at the end of the day, they want to be told exactly what they want to hear.
That's exactly right. And the perfect example of that is when you have someone who has just been heartbroken and they
Mm-hmm.
say, I wish he or she had told me the truth. When
Would it hurt you any? Would it hurt you any less if you
that's
heard the truth?
that's correct. And the thing about it is you don't want to tell it like it is. You want to tell it like you want it to be, because
Yep.
that is where you are going. And when you
Mm-hmm.
use words in an empowering way to direct yourself where you want to go, in other
Mm-hmm.
words, I'm not going to tell you like it is. I'm going to tell you like I want it to be for you, or I want
Mm-hmm.
it to be for me. And you can
Mm-hmm.
either get on the bus or get off
Yep,
based
that's true.
on the direction that I'm going with these words. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that that is one of the things right now, is the recognition of empowering statements versus disempowering statements. And
Yep,
if you
that's true.
want to be heard and you want to be seen and you want to have powerful communication with people that gets you where you want to go, you
Mm-hmm.
have to empower yourself by telling it the way you want it to be for you.
Yep.
And
And that is a law of manifestation, because guess what? You have to speak the words into existence. That's what I'm always say. You speak those things into existence in order for it to happen. As I say, is you send it out into the universe. That's exactly what it is.
mm-hmm, that's exactly right. So,
Mm-hmm.
so it's not to deny that when you're in a specific moment, you have to take account of the reality that you're currently in.
Mm-hmm.
But that's not telling it like it is. That's literally saying, at this moment, this is what I am facing, but this is where I want to go based on where I am
Mm-hmm.
right now. And
Yep.
that's the difference, because when you tell it like it is, you're in a sense saying it's hopeless,
Yep.
it's
That's true.
worthless, it's useless. And that is disempowering. It's discouraging. And it doesn't
Mm-hmm.
help you or anybody else. But if you
That's
say,
true.
I'm not in a very good situation right now, but I see this way or that way to get out of it, or if I don't see a way to get out of it, that's where hope plays a part. Because
Ah.
if you say, I'm in a bad situation, but I'm going to look to the creator upstairs and hope they
Yep.
can get me out of this situation, you've just
Oh
empowered
yes.
yourself. You've just
Ah,
asked
exactly.
for help.
Mm-hmm. Yep. That's true. That is so true.
And I think that's something for our listeners to really appreciate, is that we put so little value on the biggest things, which are hope and faith and
Mm-hmm.
charity, and being able to really use them in
Mm-hmm.
how we direct ourselves and other people forward in a meaningful and positive way.
Wait. Mm-hmm. That's true. That is very true. So we need to live with hope. We need to live with faith. We need to live with charity. And charity also means love, by the way.
There you go. Corinthians 1:13.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. Love is patient, love is kind, man.
All right. Is there anything else you would love our listeners to hear from you as we end this episode?
Mm. Be careful what you say. Words are power. And in all you do, speak life. Speak life. Speak positivity. Speak hope. Speak faith. And speak love.
And I'll add on to that and say, have greater appreciation for your ability to change the word.
Yep.
And change the world by what comes out of your mouth.
Yep. Because again, as the book of Proverbs said, the power of life and death is in the tongue. So if you're gonna choose life, let what comes out of your mouth be what contributes to the evolution of life and the adding to life.
And that's what keeps us growing together.
I see it.
All right. To our listeners, have a wonderful day. Thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you the next time.
See you next time.